So we've been talking about unions as institutions which exist to rebalance the power relationships within labour markets and to rebalance power relationships within individual employing organisations. That the traditional and built-in strength of the employer is balanced against the collective organisation of the workforce within a union organisation. Now, the ways in which unions undertake this rebalancing, of course, is very complex and will change often on a day-to-day basis. And we need to understand with some degree of realism about the various ways in which unions as organisations will seek to do this, because organisations have unions have their own organisational or institutional pressures. They don't want to be in conflict situations, in strikes with organisations all of the time, because they would just destroy themselves. They'd burn themselves up in that process. And of course, their members don't want to be in conflict situations with their employers all of the time. They have bills to pay, they've got jobs to do, they don't want to be in that situation. So we see a kind of balancing act where unions as organisations play a kind of delicate role, where they're balancing their need to maintain legitimacy as a bargaining agent for their members, that the employees in a given organisation see the utility, the usefulness of the union acting on their behalf, that there's some benefit for them doing it. And so to do that, they have to establish a certain degree of militancy. They have to actually win something now and again. They have to be able to act in a defensive way and sometimes an offensive way in order to achieve those particular objectives. But they also have another side, which is that they might need to demonstrate to employees outside of those conflict situations, outside of when there is a specific campaign or an objective to win, that there is some point in remaining in the union, that they might provide some tangible ongoing benefit, that they exist to look after their members, much like the old kind of friendly societies did 100 or so years ago in UK unions. Now, while unions have that balancing act to maintain on the employee side of the employment relationship, they also have a balancing act to maintain on the employer side of the employment relationship as well. Because unions have to, like I say, they have to win something now and again, which means that they have to be, it's sometimes quite confrontational, they have to be militant, they have to take on employers and fight hard against them sometimes. But they can't do that all of the time, because they have to maintain their sense of legitimacy with the employer, who see them as a legitimate bargaining partner, an organisation that you can do deals with, someone that you can establish and maintain a relationship with. So again, there's a balance of approaches to be struck, and this is a difficult and complex path that unions have to try and tread, to balance the interests of their members on the one hand and the employers on the other hand, and that they sit within and between all of these difficult and complex issues in maintaining legitimacy and achieving some wins, and not ending up either destroying the organisation or being seen as irrelevant. It's hard. So if we take this, they take the two sides of it to kind of abstract the different approaches that we see unions taking on different sides of the relationship. If we think about the employee side first, we often see unions emphasising either what's been called the servicing approach towards their members, and the organising approach towards their members. Now, the servicing approach towards members very much lies in the old idea of the union as a friendly society. This is often pre-collective bargaining situations where unions didn't have much power, they didn't have much sway over the organisations that their members often worked for. But what they could do was to pool resources. They could act as a society which could group together, much like credit unions do nowadays. Everybody individually is quite poor and weak, but together we can get together, and then when somebody particularly needs it, we can provide you with support. So whether that's some kind of insurance scheme or a sickness benefits scheme, or whether it's to provide some legal help or whatever it might be, that you act like an insurance company. You act like, it was described in the 1980s when this briefly became a fairly dominant theme of union organising in the UK, like the AA of the workplace, that most of the time you wouldn't be needed, but you paid your subscriptions, and when things went wrong, there was someone there to help you out. And the role of the union member was as a subscriber for union services. The other side of this approach is the organising approach. And this is about seeing union strength and union legitimacy very much around the ability and the capacity to mobilise, to organise and mobilise the membership of the union. So this isn't about saying, okay, paying a few quid here and there, and then if things go wrong, we'll see what we can do. This is about trying to put in place an organisational structure within which union members can play an active role in the defence and promotion of their own interests within the workplace, and that the union is there simply to provide the structure within which that takes place, to provide the organising framework, and that the real strength of the union isn't that there are X million members within a particular union, but how strong and how well organised and how willing the workforce in a particular area is to take action, to withdraw their labour, to be militant, to mobilise in one way or another. So that idea of unions in terms of how do they fulfil their obligations towards their workforce, it's expressed in different ways, and different unions historically have taken different emphasis towards these approaches. Some have traditionally been much more focused on the organising approach, and some have been more enamoured by the servicing approach, where where the members take a back seat, and it's all about the full-time officials and the union bureaucracy. The union structure is first and foremost. On the management side, again, we see two broad strategies in evidence. So sometimes unions will display a very cooperative face, that they want to be seen as a good partner. They want to be seen as someone who has the organisation's, the employing organisation's best interests at heart, that they will help them out, that where an organisation is going through hard times, they will do what they can to help, either through changes to workplace practices, or whether it's to delay a pay claim, or to not force an organisation into one corner or another, or to use the union's political influence to help them competitively in one way or another. But overall, to say we are engaging with you, we are attempting to cooperate. We would like to be involved in the decisions that the organisation is taking. This is like the partnership approach that we've seen, that we saw become quite prevalent during the 1990s. Where the union attempts to present itself as a good, loyal partner to an organisation, that it wants to be involved in the big strategic decisions, that there are potential to win mutually advantageous outcomes for both the organisation and its workforce if they can just get around the table and talk and find these imaginative solutions. It's the kind of thing that we associate with integrative approaches to bargaining. Now, the big risk of this approach from a union point of view is that they become seen as too close to the employer, that they stop being seen as the voice of the workforce with the employer and rather seen as a mouthpiece for management, parroting management's lines back to the workforce, and they lose their legitimacy. And so the alternative approach that we sometimes see, and sometimes we see these approaches kind of seesaw from one to the other, is a more adversarial approach. The extent to which, similar to the organising model, that we see unions being more traditional in terms of expressing their role as the voice of the workforce, and that they're not so interested in trying to find win-win, not being sucked into that kind of cooperative partnership kind of orientation with all of the risks that that implies, but to be much more straightforwardly about pursuing the interests of their members, because that is their role, that is their fundamental role, and if they don't achieve that, then what's the point? And so that adversarial approach solves the problem on one side for the organisation, because it establishes their legitimacy with the workforce. They are doing a job, they are doing what they're supposed to do for the workforce, but it might create a problem on the other side of the relationship in that they're seen as troublesome, outsiders, difficult, not partners by the organisation, who are therefore less inclined to help them out, less inclined to be generous unless they're forced to, and maybe more inclined to try and establish a different kind of employment relationship that doesn't involve a union at all. And their ability to be able to sustain an adversarial approach depends upon the objective strength of the union and their ability to maintain their position within the employment relationship, even if employers don't want them there particularly.